The titans of the Monsterverse, and all monsters in all films really, are characters just as much as any human cast. If the monsters didn't have wants, needs, goals, and all the other stuff that makes up a character, then they would end up being blank slabs of meat stumbling aimlessly about the place. How did those clips of Shin Godzilla get in here? Anyway, considering how much focus the monsters got in the marketing for Godzilla x Kong, be it showing them off in the trailers or boasting about how much screen time they have, I think it's more than suitable for them to have a video all to themselves. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Let's start with Shimu. This titan has all the trappings of a sympathetic character. She's been enslaved, incarcerated, tortured, and forced to maim and kill at another's behest for possibly thousands of years. Based on what I've heard, the blue crystal spikes in her back and head may very well have been embedded into her as part of her torture and control. If so, that makes her even more pitiable. The villain of the film, Ginger-Con, even rides her like an animal, showing her even less respect. Shimu is basically a tool to be used for the entire film, and suffers not only at the hands of her oppressors, but of her heroes too. It's not her fault she is doing what she is doing, but they have to stop her to save the day. Shimu is a very tragic character. It's no surprise then that when the crystal Ginger-Con has been using to control her has been destroyed, Shimu's first act as a free agent is to freeze Ginger-Con from head to foot. Given the pain Con suffered when his forearm got side-sprayed by Shimu's breath, I can only imagine what Ginger-Con must have been going through. We can't exactly blame Shimu for doing this though, especially considering Ginger-Con took away her free will, I repeat, for possibly thousands of years. The look on her face when she realizes she's free from his control is heartwarming, or would have been if I'd still been invested in what was going on. Shimu is the second best character in the Godzilla x Kong film, and the only reason she isn't the best is because of her interactions with Kong post-conflict. I'll get into Kong's side of things in a bit, but Shimu severely injuring Kong should have some consequence, or at the very least, a character interaction. On Shimu's part, maybe some guilt about having hurt him, showing a sign of remorse and even wanting to make up with Kong. But there's no acknowledgement. None. Worse, Shimu is, once again, treated like a pet by Kong, and she's going along with it, is even happy about it. Again, more on that in a bit, because that is more of a Kong problem than a Shimu problem. Alright, who's next? Scylla was one of the titans in King of the Monsters, who was awoken by Ghidorah to start reshaping the world, and eventually bowed to Godzilla at the end, along with everyone else. She didn't get much screen time, but she was a titan, so her mere presence was effective enough. That and her looks. Jump to GXK, and she's fighting Godzilla in Rome, for some reason we're not made aware of. Apparently there's a comic that explains it, but that story is not translated at all into the film. Nothing about Scylla's appearance in Godzilla x Kong is good. Third-party media aside, Scylla is in Rome with no obvious signs of nuclear radiation to feed on, so we're at a loss as to her goals and purpose. For all we know, this is her home, and Godzilla is invading it. But then he wouldn't do that, would he? If she's being used for the pure and simple reason that Godzilla X Kong needed a fight at the start of the film, then they could have made the fight good. Instead, it's over incredibly quickly with the trailer footage showing most of the fight, and even if I had access to the film to show you the whole thing, I'm pretty sure the fight would be over before this sentence. So if the fight was terrible, was there anything else we could get out of it? No, not really. To bring up a comparison, I want to talk about Crossbones from Captain America Civil War. He was in a previous Captain America film playing a small part, basically a faceless goon with a face. In Civil War, he pops up at the start for all of about 5 minutes before being killed off. See the comparison to Scylla yet? Unlike Scylla, Crossbones has considerable narrative purpose. He shows the state of the world, with increasing threats egged on by the challenge that is the Avengers, with his character specifically showing a tactical mindset, ruthlessness, and possible enhancements. All this while also giving him sympathy and character. And he doesn't just die, he uses his own suicide to trick and kill Captain America, or at least try to. His death kicks off the plot of the whole film, giving it incredible narrative purpose, and his actions are referred to again later. By contrast, Scylla is forgotten as soon as the camera changes angle, and her death serves no purpose than to get Godzilla in a cat box. All this happens right at the start of the film, meaning Godzilla X Kong doesn't exactly get off to a great start. What a waste. Speaking of which, Godzilla X Kong also includes the first and last live-action on-screen appearance of Tiamat. She's killed even quicker than Scylla is, with even less of a show for it. Have I mentioned I really don't like GXK? For as much detail as I can give, Godzilla breaks into Tiamat's home, Tiamat gets annoyed, they fight, Godzilla lasers her to bits. What happened to all the pomp and ceremony Titan encounters used to have? Where's the bluster, the displays, the threats, the roaring? Tiamat's fight and Scylla's fight both start and end before Ghidorah and Godzilla have had a chance to perform their displays at each other. Surely in a film that boasts about the amount of time monsters have on screen, surely they would, give the monsters some time on screen. And as I pointed out with the Crossbones comparison, you could do something with them that helps the narrative. You could show Scylla testing Godzilla, and when he looks tired, she can up the aggression in an attempt to subdue him, or kill him, forcing Godzilla to expend extra energy to kill her. This can lead to Godzilla needing to boost up as quickly as possible, leading to the Tiamat home invasion. Having Godzilla eat a nuclear power plant beforehand could make it so Tiamat is annoyed, but Godzilla overpowers her and makes her submit. We could have seen Tiamat curled up beside Godzilla whilst he uses her bed, and bowing to the empowered king when he awakes. But nah, death, 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 useless, boring death all the way. Who needs a good story? That segues nicely into talking about Mothra. The Queen of the Monsters returns in Godzilla X Kong, much to the joy of fans around the world after having not much screen time in King of the Monsters. She has some significant build-up to her return with multiple wall carvings and prophecy to boot. There's also the suggestion that she protects the Iwi, which is odd because I thought the Kongs were supposed to be doing that, and it was Godzilla who sorted the apes out when they went bad, not Mothra. Anyway, Mothra returns in a blaze of bullshit, and her first act is to stop Godzilla and Kong killing each other. Nice. A nice start, followed by lots of little bits and pieces here and there, like spitting on apes, saving humans during the final fight, and clearing Shimu's ice storm once all is said and done. Despite all of this, and all of this is a generous phrase, Mothra still doesn't have a lot of screen time, and arguably has even less significance to the plot of Godzilla x Kong in comparison to King of the Monsters. Hell, she ends up being a glorified taxi for Jaya at one point. But for me, it's not what she does that's the biggest problem, it's what she doesn't do. The life, death, and resurrection cycle of Mothra, as seen in her franchise and in King of the Monsters, is gone, replaced with sparkly magic bullshit. Just like Scylla's and Tiamat's fights, there's very little time given to appreciate Mothra's return. No sooner has she poofed back into existence, we're off doing something else. But the worst thing Mothra doesn't do is interact with Godzilla in any meaningful way. She stops his fight and plops Jaya in front of him, and that's it. Surely you'd think the King and Queen of the Monsters would have some significant interaction after she's come back from the dead. Thinking about it, is this the same Mothra? Did she reassemble from radiation? Is she reincarnated? Or is this a different Mothra? Her child, maybe? The actual return is incredibly quick and unclear, and despite the human cast being exposition machines for the whole film, they say nothing as to what is going on with Mothra. More on that when I talk about those gits in another video. Alright, let's get on to the main characters of Godzilla x Kong. Ginger Kong, also known as Scar King, is quite the lad. In an area filled with giant apes, he is a giant ape that stands out, not only because of his ginger fur, but by the way he stands and moves. A gaunt ape that lets his body hang and flop around, a characteristic that follows him into his fighting style as he bounces around hither and thither, avoiding blows. This almost relaxed look is contrasted by his menace and savagery, like when he laughed in the face of a child whose father he just murdered. His blue eyes, a startling difference compared to the other apes, suggests some kind of substance abuse, an addict to the power given to him by the crystal he wields. And let us not forget, it was he who used said crystal to hold Shimu in thrall, and potentially kept her behind a magma fall to torture her with its heat. This ape is evil, made even more evident by his choice of weapon, a whip, a symbol of oppression the world over. This works well into his name and status as a tyrannical king who sits a throne, not unlike the one found in Godzilla vs. Kong, only smaller and in far more cramped conditions. This might be down to the fact they were displaced and trapped here, and this was Ginger Kong's attempt to regain some of his lost glory. This is where the quality of Ginger Kong, and indeed the rest of the apes, begins to slide downhill. Question: what has Ginger Kong been doing all this time? This question comes with the caveat of, I don't know how long they've been down here for. If Ginger Kong and the apes have been down here a long time, potentially thousands of years, why are they so insignificant, isolated, and small in number? Where are the structures, the shelters, the tools, the culture? Where are all the families? We see one child but never a mother, hell, never a female Kong in sight. An answer might be that this isn't their home, only some place they happened to be. Except this is where Diddy Kong brought Kong, and this is where Ginger Kong's throne is, and where Shimu is. So if this is their home, where are all the signs of home? And if there's no sign of home, what have they been doing? Moving rocks for 1,000 years? If it's only been a short time, then a lot of this can be brushed off as not having recovered from their losses. But they've apparently been here long enough to set up Shimu's bindings, carve Ginger Kong's throne, and set up the magma fall mechanism. A lot of the problems stem from a lack of understanding of timescales, which is another example of bad storytelling. These problems could be sorted by having a more detailed environment, but Godzilla x Kong doesn't have time for that. And this isn't me simply pondering what they've been up to, it's trying to work out character motivation. According to the Iwi, Ginger Kong and co. tried to take over the world, but was stopped by Godzilla. So why aren't they trying to dig their way back to the Hollow Earth to get to a portal? Why aren't they conquering this new land and populating it with apes? Is Ginger Kong not an abusive tyrant? Why aren't there statues of him everywhere like the ones in Godzilla vs. Kong to bloat his ego? The apes have not flourished in a land apparently devoid of competitors. Ginger Kong specifically has not tried to escape his prison, has not tried to rebuild his empire, despite that being the name of the film, and indeed has not affected the world in any way. Does he, and by extension the rest of the apes, not have motivations, wants, needs, goals? This goes further into interactions with other characters. Kong arrives at their base, a new, never-before-seen, strong and healthy-looking ape wielding one of the Goji axes, and his presence is barely felt. Even the ape that gets in Kong's face doesn't appear to acknowledge that this is a new guy. This should be huge news. Everyone should be excited about this, both the apes in general because hooray, there's more of our kind out there, and Ginger Kong because there must be a way out now. Granted, I don't know why that surviving ape from the fight earlier didn't come back and tell Ginger Kong about this. Actually, do these apes have a spoken language? The ape who reported to Ginger Kong later appears to talk, quote unquote, and the ape in Kong's face is clearly verbalizing something? Or if he isn't, what the bloody hell is he doing? These questions continue when Ginger Kong finally gets his rear end gear and makes a run for the surface. Did the remaining apes not try to run off? Did they take over in his stead? If there had been, I don't know, statues of Ginger Kong about the place, we could have seen them knocked over by the end of the film as a sign of the apes rebelling in his absence. Someone's going to have to remind me, but did Ginger Kong have a reaction to seeing Godzilla? The Big G buried him and his people in the suburbs of the Hollow Earth. I'd imagine he'd have a bone to pick with him. The fact I don't remember any kind of interaction like that, or anything else for that matter, is probably answer enough. This brings us onto Godzilla, the murderous psychopath who took over Godzilla's role in Godzilla vs. Kong has returned with a vengeance for GXK, murdering titans for no good reason in lackluster fights, and even trying to kill Kong despite them leaving on good terms last time they met. The one plausible reason for pissing Godzilla off, Kong's axe, isn't even present. Worse, the super powerful, ultra-charged, swirly laser-breathing Godzilla gets beaten by Kong so badly Kong is able to drag him around like a sack of potatoes. Film, What the fuck was the point of killing Tiamat and Scylla if Godzilla is defeated that easily? Godzilla's motivation for killing Scylla we have to throw in the air because we don't have any context for it. Tiamat's death was absolutely not necessary. Godzilla is just being a psychopath now. He's also now always garishly bright pink, with way too many spikes, even on his elbows, which never get used. As I've said before, if there was a good reason for this change, I'd be behind it. But there isn't. And like I've been saying for years, this isn't the MonsterVerse Godzilla anymore. This is some abomination from the half-remembered childhoods of old foggy minds. Once again, my biggest issues are the things that Godzilla didn't do. A big, easy win for Godzilla X Kong would have been Godzilla and Shimu having a laser off and causing a violent storm. It would fit right into their wheelhouse, and I'm pretty sure that's been done before in one of the cartoons. Alas, nowhere to be seen. And once more, with feeling, he doesn't interact with Mothra when she returns from the dead. No surprise. No reunion with an old friend. No querying the new incarnation. Nothing. The only good thing I liked about this Godzilla is his fondness for sleeping in the Colosseum at the end of the film. See my last video where I talked about that in more detail. Otherwise, there's not a lot to say about Godzilla. He's horrendously underutilized in Godzilla X Kong. This just reinforces my theory that they are trying to get rid of the big G in favour of Kong. Speaking of, Kong is undeniably the main character of Godzilla X Kong. He introduces the film with a chase scene that ends with him covered in green blood after killing a bunch of wolves with traps. This sets up his developed intelligence, skills, tactical thinking, and his empathy as he shares his meal with Doug the Big Lizard. We also see he's built up a level of trust with humans, as he goes to them twice for help when he's injured. This is expanded from only really trusting Jaya in Godzilla vs. Kong. He further extends this trust to his own species when he meets them for the first time in this film, even when they don't necessarily deserve it. His kindness nearly gets him killed several times, but he responds in kind, denoting his dominance, for the most part. His affinity for using tools or weapons, which he has been doing since his days on Skull Island, helps a lot in Godzilla X Kong when he's given new armaments to use, and also when he sees Gingercon using his control crystal on Shimu, allowing him to understand that it needs to be got rid of to free her. Which brings up the question why Gingercon keeps trying to give it to Kong in fights, but whatever. We perceive all of this because we spend a lot of time with Kong in GXK, allowing us to really get a sense for his character. This also works in the negative direction too. Those wolves he killed at the start of the film? Yeah, he killed most of a pack of wolves just so he could eat one of them. I don't think he has a fridge he can store the rest in. I'd hardly call that a sign of nature's balance. I wonder if I've brought that up for a reason. Like I said, he trusts Diddycon, but he does so when it doesn't make any sense either. Like when Diddycon starts splashing around in the lake and Con joins in for no reason. And then there's his reaction to meeting the apes. We see his shocked face in the trailers, which is an appropriate response to seeing apes for the first time since his parents died, oh so long ago. I mean, it's not the first time he saw apes, he saw some earlier in the film just before he killed them. Anyway, after this brief bit of shock, he doesn't announce himself to them, or make much of a fuss about being among them. So much for shock and awe, I suppose. Worse, he starts picking fights to the point of knocking someone out. He has no idea what's going on here, and yet he is getting physical. given how the film ends, I feel sorry for these apes' futures. He gets rightly pissed off when Ginger Kong kills an ape, so at least there's that. He also trusts Diddy Kong again, this time justifiably so after Ginger Kong killed Diddy Kong's dad. And perhaps this trusting of Diddy rubs off on the little guy because he helps Kong later. Checks and balances, I suppose. But those balances are heavily skewed in the wrong direction by the time we get to the end of the film. Of the few things I noticed in the final fight after my brain had self-immolated, I did catch Kong looking at running civilians in the city. I'm assuming this was an attempt to show he cared about the lives of innocent people and wanting to protect them, as the Iwi Chamber of Exposition suggested all apes naturally did. Slight problem. After giving us this look, Kong smashes a building which potentially had loads of people in it. At least Godzilla has an excuse. Unlike previous MonsterVerse entries, Rio did not get evacuated prior to the Titans' arrival, so this city is chock-a-block with victims. Granted, GVK didn't exactly get this right either. But yeah, the film tries to make Kong look upset about people dying, then has him actively killing people. Make up your mind, film. The next big issue is Kong's interactions, or lack thereof, with Shimu. I already mentioned how Shimu should be acting, now it's Kong's turn. Our hairy boy notoriously gets murderously pissed off with people when they try to kill him. Even the scientists in Kong Skull Island get flattened by him just for being associated with the guys with guns. So Shimu, having significantly injured and nearly killing him, should cause some negative feelings, to say the least. Who knows how much Kong would understand about what exactly was going on with Shimu, or how much free will she had. But when the crystal is destroyed and Ginger Kong is dead, we get nothing. Worse, we have Kong riding Shimu like a pet animal, just like Ginger Kong. And he scratches her under the chin like she's a pet dog. Film, what the fuck are you doing? Is Kong going to be the next Tyrant King? Oh Jesus, he's going to be the next Tyrant King, isn't he? But these problems are third and second on the list of Kong's biggest issues in GXK. Number 1 was pointed out to me by someone in the comments. This isn't the only thing pointed out to me, nor the only thing I've mentioned in this or future videos. But bloody hell does this thing need addressing. Kong caused all the problems in this film. Arguably, the apes attacked the Monarch outpost, sparking Kong's interest, but it was Kong who went into the apes' home, attacked their people, and tried to murder their king. It was also Kong leading the apes to the Iwi that nearly got them killed, and showed the apes the portals to the surface. This is bad in and of itself, but it gets worse. The MonsterVerse has routinely shown that mankind causes the problems. It's kind of the theme of the MonsterVerse. The balance of nature is disturbed by man's unchecked meddling, and it's down to the monsters, and humans doing the right thing, to sort it out. That was until Godzilla x Kong, where Kong is the destabilizer, the one to unbalance the balance. No longer is humanity the problem. Nature itself is now causing its own problems. Does make you wonder why the people were in this film, but never mind. This is twofold: a massive character assassination for Kong, and a massive red flag that the writers don't know what the fuck they are doing. Which I suppose brings us to the conclusion of this video. Godzilla x Kong wanted to promote the focus on the monsters in its story. Having seen the story, it's clear they didn't know what to do with them once they had them. Most of the fights are short, unimaginative, needlessly bloody scuffles. Every single monster character has massive character flaws that could have easily been avoided if the writers were good at their jobs. Once again, the focus is on flash-in-the-pan visuals, leaving even the easiest to work with characters like Shimu with some horrific flaw or another. Well, almost all of them. Shimu is the second best character in Godzilla x Kong. The best character is Diddy Kong. He's a young ape brought up by a single parent in a culture dominated by cruelty. When he meets a new, strange ape, his natural reaction is to distrust and to violence. He receives his just rewards for this reaction, but then, unexpectedly, also receives kindness and trust, which he initially exploits as a weakness but grows to accept. This growth leads him to fully commit to helping this strange ape when he needed help most, and even to fighting the good fight against his former oppressors. This newfound strength of character leads him to making possibly the most decisive action in the entire film, when he smashes the control crystal. Diddy Kong has a character arc in this story. No, that's not a joke about his being swung around by Kong. He has a character development, and as far as I can tell, no flaws in his writing. So at the very least, we can say Godzilla x Kong got one thing right. And on that positive note, I'm going to end it there. Until the next video. Last but not least, thank you for watching.